morning, everyone. Hello. Welcome to our Halloween weekend. Thank you so much for being here. It is, what day is it today? It's October 30th, 2021. Welcome to this place. I hope you guys can hear me. I hope everything is working. And I hope that you're having a really good weekend to start with. This is Saturday. Chat is very busy already. I had to scroll back a couple of times to see who was here and who was saying, everybody's pretty much saying good morning, but I would love to hear what you guys are working on and what you guys are doing. And this is episode 220. I think it's 221. And I've been doing a lot of spinning and I've been doing a lot of weaving, and the kids have been home. It's been a very intense week with them at home, but they did such an amazing job. They got all of their schoolwork done, so they pretty much had a day off yesterday. That's the second week in a row where they've worked so hard on Wednesday and Thursday, and they've been able to have basically a free day because the weekends are busy. You know, they've got soccer, there's all of my stuff. I'm usually at work. They're kind of coming and going, and there's a lot of outside stuff to do. So it's just like, busy. So to give them a Friday off is really wonderful. And yesterday, I sort of, because they had a free day, I sort of said to them, like, I'm going to be here in and around and doing things. You guys need to at least do your math and your readings. They have to do that every day. And next thing I know, they had built this epic fort. It was like 5 rooms. It had a kitchen, and it took over this entire side of we've got a combined living room, dining room that we don't use as a living room, dining room anymore. And on the living room side, because this would be like where a dining room table would be, and there should be like a hutch back here, and that's kind of how this room is set up. And then the living room is here, and there should be couches and whatnot. Anyways, we have 2 chairs and a couple of side tables and then my looms. And next thing I know, like, there's C-clamps, and they're clamping blankets, and they've got the chairs from the kitchen, and they're C-clamping those things. I was just like, oh my goodness, who's going to clean this up? So they were amazing about it. They actually cleaned it all up. And I went in a couple of times because they wanted to show me things. And yeah, it was just really wonderful. So, and also many thanks to my friend Kim. She came over yesterday just to have a quick look at my Louette spring. I brought that home back in the spring, I guess. And I just wanted another set of eyes who was familiar with the loom to have a look at it, because I had set it up sort of, from transport and whatnot, and I just wasn't totally sure that everything was working properly. So one of the treadles on the bottom is broken. It's completely come apart. So once I weave this particular warp off, Mike and I are going to flip it upside down and we'll get that all fixed. So that was really good to just sit with her for a few minutes and have that opportunity to know that it is working and that it is working well. So as you know, this is Halloween weekend. So we are being visited by one of my favorite characters from one of my favorite movies, The Night Before Christmas. This is Zero, which of course is Jack Skellington's dog, who's a ghost. So we're being visited by him. And I've also got my pumpkin earrings in. So I'm a little bit Halloween-y this week. I don't know why, but I didn't really feel the Halloween spirit this week. I know very few people have put anything up outside, and a lot of the kids are apparently not going to go trick-or-treating this year. So I don't know. It just kind of doesn't feel very Halloween-y. However, it feels very fall. It is crisp outside. It was 3 degrees this morning. The trees have turned. The leaves are falling. And so it's very, very much, we're finally into fall. We actually had a frost this morning, so Mike had to scrape the truck, which was kind of cool because that means we're getting into the cooler weather. And I came down quite early this morning to get some things done. I'm going to be teaching a flax workshop later in the month, and so I wanted to make sure that my prep was on point, that I'm sort of getting that going. And I had just come down in my t-shirt, and this is from Long Way Homestead. Support your local fiber farmer. I like her other one too that says support your local fiber shed. I like that one too. Anyways, I was sitting down here and I was like, it is chilly. So I pulled on my Spark cardigan and I haven't taken it off. Full disclosure, this Spark cardigan, this is a wonderful pattern. It's steeked. Mine is completely out of hand spun 100% by Andrea Mowry. When I'm wearing it and I'm wearing it around the house, I actually take the belt off. it's just easier because I don't belt it when I'm at home anyways, and I just kind of wear it as a cardigan. So yeah. Oh, you know what, Zan? I'll look at that. She says you need to check out Scentsey's Nightmare Before Christmas merch. So freaking cool. I will definitely do that. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Taziana is saying that she's stash diving for some hand spun. And what else are you guys doing? Finished spinning some yardage for a hat. Need to measure it. That's Michelle. That's wonderful. I have become, Felicia and I were talking about this on the weekend. I've become kind of obsessed with measuring. I am kind of obsessed. So measuring like before and after, on the loom, off the loom, my hand spun, like the elasticity. Kim talks a lot about measuring her yarns in the School of Sweet Georgia and her recent workshop, Nuances to Spinning Yarn. And over the last like few weeks, I've noticed that I've just become like increasingly obsessed. So that's like my new thing is measuring all the things. So before we run the intro credits, I've been spinning a lot. I've got a whole bunch of spun bobbins here and rewound singles. I have something really neat to show you in a book that I just got that I just thought was really neat. It's some family history that I know that you guys will appreciate. And I wanted to talk about my cat Bells cardigan. And then we have a whole bunch of community participation. So without further ado, welcome to this place. Welcome to new viewers, and thank you for checking out the show. I hope that you enjoy what you find here and what you see here. Welcome to returning viewers. Thank you so much for watching the show and for continuing to support the show week after week by just watching, liking, subscribing, all those things. And to those who are part of the Patreon community, thank you so much for your continued and ongoing support. You guys are the reason why we're able to create all the monthly content and all the monthly vlogs and the downloads and whatnot that you guys have access to through Patreon. So thank you so much for being here. You're welcome. And let's get on with the show. All right, so I thought what we would do is we would start with something that came in the mail this week. And I have mentioned my great-grandmother before on the show because my mom and I found some of her weaving. And I only have like a little tiny section of Helen's weaving. But I had shown it on the show. I didn't really realize at the time what it was that I had, but the more that I've talked to my mom and the more that I've kind of gotten into all of the things that I've been doing, I have sort of started to realize, you know, what sort of family heirloom and what family history there is. So this book here, some of you might recognize it. It's called The Key to Weaving. This is by Mary E. Black. And this has been on my mom's bookshelf since her mom died, and my mom had kept it because it is a signed copy. So Mary Black actually signed it, and so when I started getting into, you know, spinning and knitting and weaving and whatnot, my mom gave this to me and said, you know, just so you know, this is a signed copy. You know, you might want to keep this. I don't know if this is like a pertinent book anymore or if it's a useful book or not, but it is a signed copy, so if you don't want it, can you please give it back to me? I didn't think anything of it. I was sort of like, that's such an old book. It was published in, let me find the copyright page. It was published, this is an original printing, and this was published in 1945. And I have to say, my mom really looked after this because it is in absolutely beautiful condition. It's missing its outer cover. And there is a little bit of water damage, but like honestly, this book is in absolutely beautiful condition. And one of the things that's really cool about it is that my great grandmother, Helen McDonald, she actually has notes in here. And so I've left them in the spots, even if I don't really understand what she wrote or understand what she used shorthand with a lot of her stuff. And so I've just left her notes where they are in the book, which is really cool. However, I pulled this out because of Unit 1 and doing all of our reading. And so I opened it up the other night, and she's actually written her name in here. So Helen M. McDonald, Halifax, Nova Scotia. They were stationed there during World War II, and they lived there and were from there because my granddad, my great-granddad, sorry, these are my great-grandparents. My great-granddad was in the Canadian Navy and was a captain in the Army. So him and Helen were stationed in Halifax throughout World War II and stayed there after the war. Anyway, so Helen's written her name in here. So I've been reading the book and reading for my OHS for my level 1 and, really trying to sort of, educate myself. However, this book is the first book, and the book was revised to the new key to weaving in 1957. And so I've been looking for a second copy of the new key to weaving, and Felicia and I were comparing her copy with my copy, and there's actually quite a bit more information in the new key. So if you are looking for some of these old weaving books and if you can get only the key to weaving, get it, but if you can get the new key, it's there's just more information in it. So there's all of this stuff inside, and it's been owned by multiple people, and I got it for $12.50. And it actually came from the UK, funnily enough. I found it at a used bookshop, and they were willing to ship it. But this book has actually been in Port Townsend in Washington. So there's these bookmarks throughout it that have been left by the used bookstore in the UK. So this book has been everywhere, and it's been highlighted all throughout, and there's highlighting, there's quite a bit of highlighting actually. So that's why it was so cheap. However, two things about this. So I started reading it the other night. This is an original copy from 1957, and it's signed. So I have 2 signed copies of Mary Black's books, but that's not all. This is from 1957, this particular copy. So there was one more revised version in 1961, I think. In the acknowledgement section, this is the part that my mom actually got quite emotional when she read this. 2, I'm going to read it out loud, okay? 2, Mrs. John W. Hills, Mrs. John R. Longard, and Miss Helen M. McDonald. That's my great-grandmother. I shall always be deeply grateful for their constructive criticism and assistance in checking the manuscript. How cool is that? So we knew that Helen had studied under Mary Black and that Helen had known her and that they had been friends. I mean, how big would the weaving community in Nova Scotia at that time in the 1940s been? But she's actually in the book. So my mom was just over the moon. She loved her grandmother a lot. Apparently Helen was just a wonderful, lovely, beautiful person and very kind, and she loved her granddad. They were really, really close. My mom would go out to Halifax by herself as a teenager and way into her 20s to see them. Anyways, it just made it really, really super special. So yeah, my mom was just overcome. So I wanted to share that. So thank you for listening to me wax poetic, and then for sort of the finale there. Yeah, so Helen was my great grandmother. So that's why it's so cool. And yeah, my mom was like, she said she remembers Helen talking about Mary like she was her friend. So they would weave together, and Mary taught Helen all of what she knows. So now I'm just like, why couldn't Helen still be alive? I mean, she would have been, she was born, her and my great granddad, like they were born at the end of the 1800s. I mean, they would be well over 150 by now, or no, they'd be over 100 and they would be over 130 now if they were still alive. Anyhow, very cool. Yeah, it's very cool. It's just really cool to find some family history like that. So I took on my weekend retreat last weekend when I was away, I actually took the rest of my bag of CVM that, funnily enough, is actually the CVM that is in this sweater. So this was a CVM fleece that was originally it was from Colorado, that Megan of our community was trying to find homes for all of these fleeces, because a woman was, I think her name was Gail. She had to close down her farm. She was selling it, etc., etc. And she needed sort of to get rid of all these fleeces, and they were in beautiful condition. So this was part of that CVM, and I just spun to the yardage that I needed for this sweater. So I think you guys might remember, especially those who were around back in the spring, I was kind of just spinning until I had enough yarn to finish off. So like I kind of spun until I had enough yarn to finish the cuffs of the sleeves, sort of thing. I don't recommend doing that. I recommend like spinning for your whole project. But for this, I was kind of bogged down with the spinning. I was working on the breeding color study. I wanted to get this cardigan done. So it was very much a sort of product over process kind of situation. But then I had the rest of this CVM in my stash, and it wasn't very much. So I took it on the weekend, and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to get done what I can get done. If I can get it all done, that would be great. And so I just sat on Friday and I kind of just spun it, and I just worked on it and worked on it. And then because I wasn't working on anything else, and I wanted to, I didn't only want to work on the CVM, I gave myself until noon on Saturday. And it was like, if it's not done by noon on Saturday, it's not going to get done. I finished it at 11:30. So this bobbin was actually completely full. I ended up, in the end, I way more fiber than I thought. It spun up to be, I don't know what the yardage is going to be, but it's going to be significant. I ended up coming home with 3 of these Magic-Craft bobbins full of singles. So I've started to wind them off. What I have found, there's 2 things. So I started to ply, and it's actually back here, so let me grab it. So I didn't wind off my singles, and I started to ply. And the Magic-Craft bobbins are quite heavy. I'm not exactly sure. I have the volumes written on some of them, but not on all of them. But I think they're pretty significant. Like my Lendrum bobbins are like 75 grams each. So these are probably somewhere, 60, 70 grams. I don't know if anybody kind of knows off the top of their head. So I started to ply, but because the singles are woolen spun and they're very, very fine, and the finished yarn is going to, after washing and finishing and plumping, it's going to come out to about 16 wraps per inch, maybe 18 wraps per inch. It's going to be quite a fine fingering weight yarn when all is said and done. And as I was plying, the singles kept breaking because of the heaviness of the bobbins. And I was plying through the rings. You can see I have my setup back here. Back when my friend Kim McKenna first taught me about plying through the rings, which we've talked about before on the show, and we'll talk about on Tuesday morning on the Wool Circle. I used a rack that goes on the back of a door because I just didn't have anywhere where I could spring load a shower curtain rod with rings attached. And so this has worked really well for me over the years. But the tension on the bobbins pulling up off of my Lazy Kate through the rings, the singles just kept breaking, and it was just the heaviness of the bobbin. So even with no tensioning, even with no just allowing the bobbins to turn freely and allowing the rings to be sort of the natural tensioner, they just kept breaking. And so I just abandoned ship and I started winding off my singles. And I normally don't rewind my woolen singles at all, but I just needed them on lighter bobbins that wasn't going to resist turning and the heaviness of the pulling off of the big bobbin. So I'm continuing to ply. I've got this first one done, and actually I've switched over to my Lendrum Saxony for plying because I really love plying on that wheel. And so I've actually got another half bobbin finished, and I've got these ones to go, and then I need to keep winding off this big guy and adding to my singles. Normally I would do it all at once, but unfortunately all of my weaving bobbins that I use for plying are all being used up right now, holding singles for my Jacob study. So I have to get these plied as well. And once these are plied, I'll have all my bobbins free, and I'll be able to start actually rewinding my CVM singles. But just a reflection, if you guys are plying and you're really having a tough time and your singles are breaking, or you're just feeling that backspin, you know when you pull off of your bobbins and they ricochet back and they backspin, just think about rewinding your singles onto, these are sectional warping bobbins. You can buy them really quite cheaply, and they're really, really, really light. Again, on a few of them I have the how much they weigh written on, but of course I don't on these ones because Murphy's Law. But they're really, really light. They're only a few grams, and like maybe 15 grams maybe. And they just spin so nicely, and you don't get that backspin. Yeah, Kimberly, so Kim was over yesterday and we were looking at my spring, and Kimberly, she mentioned that she was going to be teaching that workshop and doing that. You're going to love it. It is a wonderful, wonderful workshop, and it's really neat to be able to go through with her, like why rewinding is important, and why take the time to rewind. So these are all rewound. So I got these finished on the weekend as well. So this is my organic Polworth from Hello Yarn, and it's in the colorway Spelt, which was a club colorway from was it from September or was it from August? I can't remember. And I was spinning it on my Ashford E spinner, which is right here actually behind me. And then I spun all of the singles to one bobbin, and then I put like placeholder fiber in between kind of thing. I actually used some of the CVM that I was spinning, to be honest, and just created like a knot sort of thing between the singles, so that as I was rewinding, my finger would feel where it came up against the next singles. And then I switched to the next bobbin and rewound. And isn't that beautiful? I almost kind of don't want to ply it because I just want to look at it. It's so pretty. It's so fall. And you guys know how much I love gray and that ochre gold yellow. I just love it. So this will be a 3-ply. It won't be a really, really super fine 3-ply because I'm expecting the Polworth to really blossom and to really bloom. It'll really poof up in the washing because I pre-drafted it significantly. If you guys saw in the intro credits, there was that photo at the end of all the little nests of fiber. Those were all pre-drafted. And so that pre-drafting and that pre-attenuation allows that fiber to get that air back into it, and it'll plump up in the washing. And Polworth should plump quite significantly. So once this is washed and plied, I'll measure all of my stuff, and I'll share with you guys how elastic it comes out. We'll see how elastic it actually is. So lots and lots of pre-drafting, and I'm expecting these to be quite plump when they're done. The one thing that I will say, I did this, I was winding these off really quickly, and I wasn't taking the time. One of the things that I have found to be really, really helpful, and this is another tip from my friend Kim, is to wind a few yards of another yarn over top after you're finished winding your singles. So you can tie it on, you can wrap. I generally just do a simple knot, but I'll see how the end of the singles here. I'll just slow down and explain this for a minute. See how at the end of the bobbin here, this last little bit of singles is actually untwisting, and you sort of have to add the twist back in and then somehow secure your singles under one of the other ones, and you have to pull the other singles up to sort of secure this one underneath. So one of the things that Kim does is she actually attaches another piece of yarn. I usually just use the ends off of my loom, like my thrums, and I'll tie it on, and then I'll wrap that around, and it secures the end of your singles so that you don't lose any twist. But also, I've done this a couple of times now. It also, and I guess I haven't really talked about it on the podcast because I feel like we've been kind of a bit disjointed this fall with premieres and live streams and things going on, and spinning through the Sweet Georgia breed workshop kits. If you wind that extra little bit of yarn around after your singles, when you go to start plying those first few yards, you kind of get your wheel going, get your plying going, and then you get to your actual singles and you're already in the groove. The other thing is you don't lose that twist out of the end of your singles and create sort of a kind of a, well, it's almost kind of just, you're losing that twist and you're losing all of that really nice spinning. And if you're not careful and if it continues to unwind, you're going to start losing more and more twist, and it'll really affect those first couple of yards of your spinning. So we'll talk about that some more on Tuesday. So I've been working on that and I finished those singles. And then lastly, oh, that's a great idea, Janine. So she says when she's ending a bobbin, she does a ply back for about 3 inches at the end of the singles. That's a really good idea because that'll kind of secure them and it'll keep the twist from being lost. Yeah. This, I finally finished my super fine alpaca. So I have an alpaca sensitivity. I'm not really sure how bad it is because I didn't have a reaction to this. So I'm wondering if it's to certain types of alpaca and llama, or maybe when there's a certain amount of dander in it. I'm not totally sure. But this is 100 grams. It was dyed by the owner of Itsy Bitsy Yarn Shop in Whitehorse, Yukon. And I was spinning it quite fine because this was quite fulled. The top, I didn't strip it down. I didn't do very much to it. I just kind of started spinning, to be honest. And now it's been resting on the bobbin for a few days. So you see how once you get these rested singles, they don't ply back on themselves properly because they're not activated anymore. They've been resting. But the yarn is actually quite nicely twisted, and it'll look like this when it's done. Sort of a 35-degree twist angle, not too severe. It doesn't need a lot of twist, and you can see that the spinning is quite fine because it was fulled. The top was fulled, and so what I did was I sort of took advantage of that, and I just started spinning, and you couldn't pre-draft the top, you couldn't pull it apart, it was just kind of matted together. And so the nice thing about that is when your top is like that, you can actually draft quite finely because you can only grab a few fibers at a time. So during the last couple of maker mornings this month, I've just been sitting there working away at it on my Crimps minstrel and just grabbing a few fibers, spinning. The one thing that I was noticing was my fingers were getting faster than my treadling was, because I was chatting and interacting and, you know, kind of a bit distracted. And so as I was spinning, I was like, oh no, wait, I need to actually either slow my fingers down, slow my hands down, or I need to treadle faster. So there's parts of this that are a little bit underspun. So what I'm going to do later today is put it on the Lazy Kate, put it back through the bobbin, add some more twist, and then I'll wind it off and wind my singles to start to ply. And I'll do the same thing that I did with these. I'll wind them off, but I need to add some more twist because I could feel there were sections that were underspun. And actually, Judith Mackenzie McEwen, I don't know if she still does, but she used to put all of her singles back through the wheel just to tighten them up a little bit. And of course, a lot of our sort of spinning gurus, if you will, from a lot of them are spinning to weave, so they want those slightly higher twist singles anyways. But this will make a really beautiful yarn once it's done and once it's plied. I just need to tighten it up a little bit. Very, very, very soft colors. It's very pastel-y. There's no vibrancy or brightness to it. It's almost kind of muted in the color, so it makes me think that the color maybe didn't strike fully, or maybe she didn't use a really dark saturation in acid dyes. Is it still called depth of shade? Because it's very, very, very pastel-y and gentle and light colored, which is really pretty. I think it'll be really nice yarn when it's done. So you guys can hear in the background, Nora is weaving on her Halloween scarf. Do you want to come and show them? It's beautiful weaving. Do you want me to show them? Come and hand it to me. So let me put the cameras back to the other one. Nora's she's not gonna show you, but I'll show you. Are you sure you don't want to come and model? Okay, so this is Nora's weaving. She started this yesterday. So this is her second project on a rigid kettle. She even knows how to advance a warp, which is just wonderful. So let me hold this up. She's working on this to try to get it done for Halloween for tomorrow. She's using fingering weight yarn, and look at her edges. Aren't those amazing? You can really see it against the black, but she's doing just a beautiful job, and she's evenly beading. She's really packing her fiber down, and she's got, so this is Barocco Ultra Alpaca Fine. This was some sock yarn that I won at Knit City recently. And then this is that orange from that, I was trying to do that cardigan. I pulled it all out, it's gone. And so this is Cascade 220 fingering, in the orange. So she's using it all up. It's kind of blowing the camera out because the orange is so bright, but she's using a boat shuttle, and she's just doing a phenomenal job. So this is her second project, and this is like, yeah, she's really doing it. So I told her once she's done this, if she wants to, thank you, sweetie, she can move on to the Jane if she wants to, and she can do a project on the table loom. So Nora, everybody says your weaving is beautiful. Beautiful work. Great job. That's awesome. I love it, Nora. Good job, Nora. Yeah, so just really fun. I'm really proud of her for doing that. So let me flip back to the product again, and we'll have a look at this new spin that I started last night. So I'll try and zoom the camera in a little bit more so that you guys can really see this, but I need to figure out which yarn is which. So it's hard to tell sometimes, like once you kind of organize yourself. I don't know if this is my 3-ply or my 4. This is the 4-ply. Okay, awesome. All right, so I started a new spin last night. My friend Lynn had, I had a gift certificate for West Coast Color. And so Lynn very kindly, I looked through all the fiber, and I wasn't totally sure what I wanted to get, but I ended up finding, I think I have a photo of it for you guys actually. Just let me flip. Yes. So this is West Coast Color. This is a Polworth silk blend, and it is just absolutely beautiful. I don't know what Lynn does in her dyeing, but this is 60/40 Polworth silk, so you can really see the sheen of the silk. And I don't know what Lynn does with her dyeing, but she really is able to preserve the underlying fluff, the underlying characteristics of the fiber, so that when you go to spin it, it's just so easy. And you know, you don't have to do very much with it to really kind of end up with this beautiful product. So I've split the braid, quote unquote, the fiber in half, and I took each of the halves and I pre-drafted them all. So they've all been pre-drafted, and it's to sort of bring all of that air into there, and you can see that sheen, you know, under the light. It's quite, the lights are bright, and so, you know, to be able to see that sheen, I mean, it's just absolutely beautiful. And last night I started spinning on my e-spinner, and I was spinning quite fine, and I thought, you know, there's a lot of air in this, and it's going to be quite a lofty yarn. You know, I suspect with all the pre-drafting and stuff, it's going to be quite bouncy and springy, and it's just going to be beautiful. It'll really have a lot of air in it though. So I wonder what the yarn is going to be like. And then I thought, what am I doing? I've started spinning. I haven't done any ply back tests. I've just started spinning. Like, hello. So I stopped, and I was halfway through the first 25 grams of the 100 grams. And I was sort of like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? I was just on total autopilot. So I slowed down, I stopped, and I did some ply back tests, and I am just so happy with this yarn. So this here is the this right here, this is the 2-ply, and I just love this. Even if you were to ply it and up-ply it slightly, it would just, in the washing, I mean, it would just relax down. Like, look at that elasticity. It's just, you know, that pre-drafting, adding that air back in, and then you get this just amazing bounce, right? you know, no matter who the dyer is and no matter what they're doing to the fiber and no matter how they're handling it, it's going to compact down a little bit. But in that dyeing process, we talked about this in the sheep breeds workshop on the School of Sweet Georgia, that reactivation of that crimp from getting the fiber wet and from dyeing it, the fiber is going to behave differently than if it wasn't dyed and if you just bought it straight from the mill or straight from the manufacturer. What do you need? What about it, Nora? You can talk.
I need one of those.
Another one? I only have this one and it's got yarn on it. Nora needs another bobbin to weave, like to wind. So I'm just going to give her, this has yarn on it, but you can fill it on top. I don't have another one. So here, Nora, do you want to come in over here and wind? You just have to be quiet. Thanks, you guys, for being so patient. I don't want to discourage her from not working on her project. Like, she's just so got this. So because of that reactivation of crimp in the dyeing process, you know, that crimp becomes active and your yarns become airier and loftier and they just really kind of come to life. And then if you go on and you pre-draft and you pre-attenuate, I mean, just look at that. I mean, it's just amazing. So that's the 2-ply. And then I was like, well, I wonder if I'm going to get that in the 3-ply. So this is the 3-ply and look at that. Isn't that incredible? Like, that's a huge amount. I don't actually have a ruler right here. I have measuring tapes, but I'm not sure. There we go. So if I hold the yarn here at 10, let's see if I can. So it's basically an inch. I'm going from like just before 10 to, yeah, isn't that crazy? And this is the 2-ply. So let's see if I can show. So here's the 2-ply. It's going just over probably 3/4 of an inch. Isn't that incredible? So then I thought, well, I wonder what the 4-ply is like. Because I don't usually sample 4-plies, but I've recently sort of been quite enamored with the idea of spinning multi-ply because I tend to spin quite fine. And Nora's yarn's getting in the way here. Sorry, you guys. I know you don't mind. Fostering creativity in children. It's so important. So then the 4-ply, I started playing with, and it's even more elastic. So then I was like, maybe I should spin a 4-ply and just sort of see what it's like. I mean, how crazy is that? And it's just from pre-drafting, pre-attenuating, and then you've got a bouncy fiber on top of it. So beautiful twist angles on the Ply Back Tests. And I think if I were to spin a 3 or a 4-ply, like if I were to ply this as a 3 or 4-ply, I think I would try to match these. In the plying, you have to add a little bit more twist because you're going to lose some of that twist in the washing and then the finishing process. But I was really taken with all of these different yarns. So how cool is that? Zan, I think, had a really great question. Do you spin faster on an e-spinner? Is it more efficient? So I am going to say for myself personally, we've actually talked about this a lot in the past, no. And the reason for that is, and I actually have it set up here. I was planning on showing you guys. So if you're happy to kind of wait just a split second, let me show you what the spinning is like for me. So I'm going to just turn here for a second, and I'm just going to set this up, and I hope that you guys can see. I use on the back of my e-spinner, this was a trick that I got from my friend from my friend Lee. At the back of my e-spinner here, I know it's hard to see, I use a switch. So I put this between my e-spinner and my battery pack. If I turn on my battery pack here, when I turn this on, sorry for the table shake, when I turn this on, it'll start the e-spinner. Go that way, Nora. Might be easier.
But there's like...
Oh, is it not easy enough? Okay, come on this way. Push the Kromsky back and then you can scooch out. She got her purple bobbin, so now she's off to the races. All right, so my tray is full. This needs to be organized. I feel like I'm constantly organizing this. The other thing too is that the e-spinner, it doesn't slow down and speed up quite to the same extent that the Hanson did. So I start down at sort of 10, 11 o'clock. And then when I'm ready to start going, I put it up. So I put it up to about 2 o'clock, somewhere between 2 and 3 o'clock. And then as you can see, like, you can only spin as fast as your hands can go. If I go any faster, I just cannot keep up with the speed, especially when you get these spots where you need to go back and double draft and you need to sort of fix them because they're, you know, the fibers didn't draft quite right. You didn't pre-draft in that area. There's sort of a little clump of silk, you know, whatever. And so I really can only spin as fast as my hands can go. So it's faster in the sense that I can drag it around with me and I can take it with me, but it's certain, and I can do other things in the sense that, like, I can talk to you guys, I can wait for the kettle to boil, but like I can do that on my treadle wheel. So I wouldn't say that it's faster. However, I will say that I tend to get a lot more done because I just don't find that I get, I guess I just don't feel like I get quite as interrupted when I'm using my e-spinner. It's almost like I can sit there and work on my stuff. Like last night we watched a movie. It was a terrible movie. And Mike had picked it. It was just horrible. And I spun through quite a few of these. But the thing is, it's a big spin. These are quite substantial. And I pre-drafted them all and I have them all ready to go. But like I still have 4 from this first half to go, and I've already done 4. And that is how poofy and how much this fiber blooms with pre-drafting. It's just unbelievable. So I just keep it in the side pocket here over here on my e-spinner. I've just got them nicely in this little, and they're hanging off of an S hook just off the side. And that way, if the e-spinner gets pushed around or if anything happens, it's protected for the most part. And I would actually normally load this fiber onto a distaff, but because I started it so quickly yesterday, I just needed something to get my hands on. I ended up just not taking the time to load it, but I may still load it because of that, how flyaway and how fine the fiber is from all of that silk. So yeah. What are the gray and reddish ring things there? You know what they are, Dorothy? You are so funny. It's washi tape. I use it in my bullet journal. I use it in my, so I use it to tack things down. So my bullet journal is actually right here, so I can show it to you guys if you want. I just started a new one because actually my other one was full. And so I have my bullet journal here, and I use it to tack things down. So this is my bullet journal, and I had made a list because I didn't have my journal with me, and so I taped it down. So these are all the things that I've got going on, the things I need to do. This is all the stuff that's upcoming. Lunches for the kids for next week. These are Patreon related things that I want to finish this week, or things that I'm kind of in the process of working on. This is tasks that are like family tasks, things that are going on in our home or things that I'm working on that aren't related to Patreon. And then over here is the things that I have to get done this week. These are the things that are like a must do. And then this is the week and how I organize our calendar. It's a lot of like, and then this is dinner down here. These are all of our dinners. We don't have anything planned for tonight, so I don't know what we're having for dinner tonight. No, that's tomorrow night for Halloween. We do burgers and fries on Halloween, so veggie burgers and air fried potatoes. Yeah, it's a lot of transcription. So I go from like my Google Calendar, my digital calendar that Mike and I have synced, and then I transcribe and write down most things on here. But I find just the visual and having everything out in front of me where I can see it all. I can check in with it once or twice throughout the week. And this fall, it has been a game changer because I was feeling like I was constantly on Google Calendar going, okay, what do I have to do? What's going on? What's coming up? And I didn't feel like I kind of knew what was coming up, what was get in progress and what was getting done now, and then what I needed to get done like right now. So I just found that this was a great way to organize myself. Yeah, Ashley says she'd be completely lost without her bullet journal. Yeah, so gee, I knew you were super organized, but that is a totally different level. So funny story, I'm actually not very organized. This does not come naturally to me at all. It has been something that I've had to make fit into my life, and I've had to make it an intentional practice to be more organized. I actually fly by the seat of my pants a lot in the past. That's kind of how, like, it, you know, starting the podcast was on a whim. You know, starting to record and put things out there was a whim. It wasn't really until we started having like regular content that I started to be more organized and started to be more methodical about things. It doesn't come naturally to me in the same way that it comes naturally to somebody who's really analytical and really logical. I'm very logical, and I'm very pragmatic and very I'm very pragmatic, I'm very practical, but I also live in my artist's brain a lot of the time. I am off on cloud 9 90% of the time. And Mike says, I'm kind of like the dreamer that never grew up. Like, he often says to me, I come up with these crazy ideas, and he's like, you've been really thinking about that. Like, you've just been living in this alternate universe. And I think for a lot of kids, they have all these dreams, and then as they get older, they become more and more realistic. You know, well, we have to be realistic. I kind of never got that because my mom is an artist, so she never told me to be realistic. So I didn't know that these crazy ideas and dreaming was sort of, a lot of kids start to lose that. So anyhow, I definitely have two personalities. I'm definitely a Gemini. I definitely have a yin and yang. Mike does too, which is why it works so well. Because he's a Gemini as well. So there's like 4 of us in our marriage. So this is the Cat Bells cardigan. This is actually a pattern by Megan Nodeker, who's local to me. She's absolutely lovely. This is the local wool that I was telling you guys about, and this is my friend Anne Embra's yarn. It's a CVM Merino Suffolk cross, I feel like. I want to say. I did throw it in the show notes last week, but I don't want to take the time to look for it. Anyhow, I started the sleeves. I finished the body of the cardigan. You're supposed to knit to like something like 24 or 25 inches. I can't remember. And it was just getting too long. I'm not that tall. Megan's quite a bit taller than me. And I had tried on the sample at the show at Knit City, and it was in the size medium. This is a size small. And it was just so long on me. And I like long cardigans, and I wear a lot of long cardigans. But with pockets and whatnot, when I was wearing hers, I couldn't reach the pockets. They were too low. So I thought, well, if I shorten it by just like an inch or two, I think I knit to 22 inches, and then I put the 1-inch band on, which I think my band ended up being a little bit over an inch. It's like 1.25 inches. It would just be a little bit better to be able to reach the pockets. So I can actually put it on. Do you guys want to actually see it on? It's quite a lovely cardigan. I would highly recommend this, you guys. If you're spinning and you've been spinning for a while and you are comfortable spinning worsted weight yarn or heavy DK, I would highly recommend giving this a shot to spin for, because the yarn doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. No yarn for any project has to be perfect. But you can get away with some inconsistencies because of the garter. So because of the garter, I'm going to put it over top of my hair so that you guys can see. Because of the garter, you can get away with a lot. And sorry, Diane, you need to just move. So this is how long it ends up being. And the sleeves obviously are in progress. It's a drop shoulder. So drop shoulder means that you've got, what way am I going? This way. Everything on the camera is backwards, so it's like looking into a mirror. So the drop shoulder comes down to here, and then you pick up your sleeves and you work straight down. So the nice thing is the first couple of inches of your sleeves are already done. So you're not knitting to like 20, 25 inches of sleeve. You're only knitting like 16 or 17 inches, depending on the length of your arms. My arms are very long. From under here to my thumb is like 25 inches or something. Like I'm very long limbed. my legs are short, but all of my height went into my arms. And then at the back neck, you've just got this lovely V opening, which actually you would think would be annoying and that it would be like right up against the back of your neck and it wouldn't feel right, but it actually is really, really comfortable. And you can see it's so easy to wear. So I need pockets. That's the only thing. I just need my pockets. So really happy with how this turned out, or is turning out. And it takes a lot of yarn. I think for my size, it's like 1,200 yards. But if you're spinning worsted weight, it goes really quickly. So yeah. It's a lot of knitting. Like I feel like I've been knitting a lot on it. Like it's been a little bit of, you know, I don't know what the right word would be. Like it's just been you know, an intense knit. Wah! I just banged a camera. So those are my projects. This is Cat Bells by Megan Nodeker, also known as Pip and Pin. And yeah, it's a great sweater. It's warm too. This is really warm. Like this sweater is really warm because it's basically double knit, right? You guys, like, you know, you're dealing with I think, is the Spark DK? I feel like I knitted on 4mm needles or 4.5mm needles, but it's all color work, right? It's all mosaic knitting. It's actually not color work, it's mosaic knitting. No, it's color work. It's color work. And so you're carrying all of your floats all the way through your knitting. And so by the time you finish, you've basically got 2 layers of fabric. So I find this cardigan really, really warm, and I love it. So I've worn it a lot. All right, let's move into community participation because otherwise we're gonna have like a 3-hour show. No, it's too early. Nora's just telling me that she's gotten really fast with her weaving. She just added the purple, which she was winding while we were talking about elasticity. And now she's advancing her warp again. And she's like, this is just going so fast. And her edges look great, so that's wonderful. What's the difference between color work and mosaic knitting? That's a great question, Ashley. I'm actually probably not the best person to ask. However, what I understand is that with mosaic knitting, you're slipping stitches, and with color work, you're knitting every stitch. So with this, you're knit one of your main color, knit one of your contrast color, but with mosaic, you would have slipped one of those stitches and only knit with the one color. Patterns like the shifty, so there's the cowl, the shawl, and then there's the sweater. That uses mosaic knitting where you're actually carrying color. Those are the wrong names. So yeah, mosaic is a type of color work. Thank you, Linda. Yeah. Priscilla says alpaca fiber doesn't take dye as easily as the wool, so it could be the reason the colors are more pastel. I think the other thing too is that the alpaca, I think it was probably handled a little bit roughly in the dyeing process because it was very, very fulled. So yeah, mosaic, you hold one yarn at a time versus multi-strands. Thank you, Linda. That's really super helpful. Okay, so Linda had this great question in the Ravelry group. It was under Ask Anything, which we haven't really been using. I've really found that the Ravelry group, or like just Ravelry in general, is a little bit quieter than it used to be. But I do check it and I do try to respond regularly, and I do go into Ravelry to check the group. So I saw this question from Linda and I thought it was a really good one. And I would love to hear from those of you who are woolly people. I would love to hear your thoughts about it. So this was her question. I carded shorter locks with more crimp together with longer ones with less crimp. What can be expected of this mixture? How to spin it into a robust yet lofty sweater yarn? Would you choose to spin to the crimp of one of the locks, or can you average the count? I have heard of wool silk blends. I guess I am doing something similar, be it with 2 wools. So she was referring to spinning to crimps per inch. So silk and wool they're 2 totally different fibers and they spin very differently. And depending on if you're dealing with like a commercially prepared top, where you have silk mixed in with the wool. The silk may or may not be cut. It probably is cut. And then it's blended in. And so it may be all of one, like silk doesn't have a staple length, and it doesn't have any crimp, and it doesn't have scales, and it's a totally different protein fiber, and it's smooth and it's sleek. So when it's mixed in with the wool, whichever is the most dominant in your blend, whether it's silk or wool, the fiber, the spin will spin as that dominant fiber. So if you have a 60-40 blend of wool silk, it's the fiber is going to spin more as a wool than it will as a silk. But if it's 50-50 wool and silk, it will spin more as silk. The wool will kind of take a back seat. It'll feel very slippery. It'll feel very silky. It'll have an incredible luster. It'll take the twist really beautifully. The funny thing is that this Polworth silk that I'm working on, that I was waxing poetic about before community participation, this is 60-40, and this is spinning very much like silk. It still has those woolly characteristics because of that bounce, that loft, and that airiness, but because of Lynn's ability to dye her fibers so beautifully and to really preserve the underlying characteristics of the fiber, that Polworth kind of takes a little bit of a back seat in the actual spinning, that it really feels quite like silk when you're spinning. And somebody who maybe doesn't know what the percentages are and they sit down to spin, they may say that this is higher percentage silk than it actually is because of how well prepared it is. This is different. This is a discussion of crimp, staple length, and fiber characteristics. So this came off of one fleece. I think according to her comment in Ravelry and what she said, I think this all came off of one fleece. That's a big difference between your shorter staple and your longer staple there. And as you can see, there's a difference in those crimps per inch for sure. If you take some mini combs and you lash on fiber that's already been prepared and then you pull off all of your staples, you'll have anywhere from longer staples up to shorter staples in your spinning top. So if you buy comb top and you lash on and you check your staples, you're going to have all those different staple lengths in there. You're going to have an average staple length, however. So when you look at your fleece and you look at what is being combined and what your fiber preparation is going to be, you need to sort of look at, if you're going to include those really short bits and if you're going to include those really long bits, what are the majority of the lengths of your staples? So what of that pile that you're combining, what's the average in terms of what are the most? Maybe you have more short bits than long bits. Maybe you have more medium bits than short or long. Maybe you have more long bits. Whatever you have the most of, that's what you spin to. So you kind of need to know in your spinning what your average is. And your hands are going to adjust as you come across shorter bits and longer bits in your spinning, because that your hands just will. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a yarn that's thick and thin. If it was me, I probably wouldn't have combined these. They're very different, and those short fibers are going to pill eventually. They're going to work their way out of the fiber because they need more twist to hold together than those long staples do. And the long staples, if they're hard spun and there's a lot of twist added to them, they're going to start to feel ropey and wiry. I don't know what kind of breed this is and what kind of fleece this is, but it looks like it's sort of a it looks like it's a medium versus a fine fleece. It doesn't look like a true fine fleece. So the more twist you add, the harder it's going to go. Go for it, Nora. I just don't have a bobbin. Do you want to? No, there isn't one over there either. There might be one up on top of my loom. So those short bits are going to wiggle their way out over time. So what I would do, because you've already prepped it and you've already sort of brought it all together and you're trying to spin to crimps per inch, spin to the crimps per inch that is your average. What's the most fiber that's in there? What's the crimps per inch of that fiber? Is it, 2 inches, 3 inches? What's the most? Is it the longer bits? And then you can spin to that crimp. Yeah, you can use that, Nora. Nora's walking around trying to get bobbins, so it's a little bit distracting. I'm sorry, you guys. And do some sampling and see what you can get away with and see what you can do. Because in a sweater spin where you've got your arms rubbing under here, those short bits are going to work their way out. Kimberly says, Judith McKenzie says that uneven staple length in your fiber is what makes wool yarn scratchy, not the actual breed. I don't disagree. I think Judith is absolutely correct. I think there's other things that you can do as well to make your yarn less scratchy when you've got all of these different staple lengths in there. One of the things that that Deb Robeson talks about is actually clipping your tips off. That'll help with scratchiness. The other thing that you can do is when you're washing, you can allow your water to cool in that final rinse. You can allow your water to cool all the way down, as cool as it'll go, to room temperature or even cooler if it's in the evening, so that those wool scales close and they close down on the fiber and they don't remain open, that they cool down and close, and that'll create a smoother, sleeker wool shaft. Yeah, this is a tricky one though, and I think, Linda, the best thing that you could do is actually just sample, because you're going to need enough twist to lock those shorter fibers in there, but not so much that your wool doesn't become wiry and hard. So let us know how it goes. I'm actually really curious to know. And Linda, if you could post in the Ravelry group in the Ask Anything thread and let us know about your sampling, how that all goes, that would be great. All right, so this is Breeding Color Studies on Jacob, which is what we're doing right now. This one is from Donna, and this is local Jacob to her, and this is her spin. And isn't that beautiful? Look at that loft. Oh, it's just beautiful. I just want to squish it. I'm sure the bulk is amazing. So when you squish down, bulk is when you squish down something and it comes right back up. The bulk on that just looks incredible. Really well done, Donna, and I love the color. I was actually wondering if you're going to dye it. This is from Maria. She decided to dye her own Jacob study. So she says life's been very hectic lately, but she was able to snatch a few moments to start prepping her Jacob spin. So here's what she's done so far with a little bit of a plan. She had 2 100-gram white braids that she dyed in various colors. Then she took the one braid, split it down the middle and put one half aside, and the remaining half she split and sectioned into separate colors. And then she's been hand blending Rolex on her hand carders with some black Jacob. So that's what gives it that interest. So compared to the brights, almost kind of candy colored brights in the middle there, and then around you can see the Rolex, they have that tone, that depth from adding in that black, which is just brilliant, Maria. I can't wait to see your finished yarn. What's up, Nora? Oh, there's scissors there, sweetie. This is from Megan. So this is Zero to Hero. I am so excited to share this from Megan. Zero to Hero is where we go all the way through from fiber to yarn to finished objects. And Megan has finished this is her cashmere yarn. So ignore this for a sec. I'm not sure how these fibers are going to cycle. This cardigan though, this blue one, is her Freya hand spun. It was an excellent week for finishing projects. I love this cardigan so much. 3-ply Corriedale from John Arbin in the Indigo Dust colorway. It is a bulky weight spun on the mini spinner and then plied on the flat iron. Look at that yarn. How even and consistent is that? Isn't that amazing? And again, amazing bulk. Like if you were to crunch that down, it would just pop right back up again. And then her other spin is also, she did it, her Forever Heirloom 100% hand spun cashmere sweater. Spun 3-ply fingering weight high twist on her shacked reeves. She spun 1,200 yards and still has some leftovers. It is so soft and light and warm, the penultimate project for sure. And actually, I don't think that that's her yarn. I think that yarn goes with another project. But Megan, just beautifully well done with your Freya cardigan and also with your hand spun cashmere. Just amazing, amazing. Hannah, your Rolex, if they're very fluffy and they kind of come apart, I would highly recommend that you spin with them, because generally those are the ones that make the loftiest, airiest yarn. So give it a try. See what happens. That's the only way to learn. This is from Elise. I love this cardigan so much. So that previous photo from Megan's stream, it should have been down here in this stream with Elise's stuff. Long story on this yarn and sweater. I finished the knitting on this sweater, maybe, made of hand spun mill ends held double with a commercial alpaca silk lace weight. I finished the initial spinning around the end of 2019, creating a gradient by marling the dark gray purple with the light gray in the 3-ply. I ended up with 4 colors that I blended further by alternating rows. I love this effect, Elise. I just think it's fantastic. And actually, if I take a moment to add in that picture of those yarns, let me just find it here. It's here somewhere. Here it is. This was her finished yarn, so I'll add that in. She frogged the sweater and, oh, so hang on. But I created my own sweater with puff sleeves, but ran out of yarn on the bind off and stashed it away for a long time. I decided to pull it out and block it to see if it was worth finding a way to finish, but I wasn't happy with the fit or the gauge. I frogged the sweater and rewashed the yarn and stashed it again, and I finally decided to pull it out, added the alpaca lace weight to fill out a looser gauge, and hopefully add softness to it since it's not quite next to the skin. She started the Weekender by Andrea Mowry, but ended up frogging that too. At least this is all part of the making process. I frog so many things, and it's just part of figuring it all out. She found the Pure Fuzz by Skein Knits, and that is what I used for the final sweater, though I knitted a bit longer than the pattern to use up more yarn. As soon as I put the sweater on, I felt like it swallowed me and that it's too baggy. Though I'm not sure how well that comes through on the photos. I know exactly what you mean and how that feels. So she's thinking about taking it back several inches of the body back to a more standard length. It would be really interesting, Elise, to see what you end up doing because I love this sweater, but I know what it's like to pull something on that's just so big and oversized that you're not sure you're going to wear it. But I love this effect and I love how subtle this gradient is. I think it's just beautiful. So it'll be interesting to see what you end up doing with this sweater because you're on to something with this yarn, but I know what you mean about feeling like something's a bit too big. So, sample spinning and play. The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct. That is from Carl Jung. These are from Laureline. Remember how we shared the Halloween bat last week? She's been knitting her fingerless mitts. Or maybe these are mittens. I'm not exactly sure. So funny. I'm knitting my hand spun mitts while listening to last week's podcast, and I was taking a picture to show my friend, and I was sharing it in community participation. So much fun. So really well done, Laureline. I love how those are knitting up. I can't wait to see them finished. Hopefully you'll have them in virtual spin group on Tuesday. This is from Charlotte. I love this so much. Not a fan of sparkle in this art bat, but I finished spindle spinning it anyways. Here is what the sparkly skeinets, I love that, skeinets, have become, and I couldn't be more pleased. Still to come are the acorns. So she's done the pumpkins and some of the leaves. There's oak leaves there. Patterns are from Elves World on Etsy and Susan B. Anderson at Barrett Wool Company. One of the leaves was a freebie, and it's linked in the show notes by Ariane Fresca. Isn't that cool? Yeah. Nora loves the sparkle. She likes the pumpkins and the acorns. This is from Laura. This was so fun. Took Bonfire from End of the World on Etsy and then broke it up by color. Did some blending where she needed to so she could create a sequence for chain plying that would mimic the colors of fire and smoke from the bottom up. Isn't that cool? It's like the coals all the way up to the smoke. I just love this. I love that clear white one too at the end. I think that's really, really pretty. Yeah. What does frog mean? That's a great question, Sharon. So frog started, I think, because of Ravelry. I suspect it was sort of a thing. So when you're frogging something, you rip it, rip it, rip it. And that's where it came from. Yeah, hence frogging. So cool, hey? Yeah. I know, I didn't know either. When I first joined Ravelry back in 2006, they were talking about like frogging projects and stuff, and I had no idea what it meant. And I hadn't really been online as a knitter until then. And I started sort of reading people's knitting blogs because that was a big thing back there. Then people had knitting blogs and they would post all their finished photos. I wish that was still a thing. If people could resurrect the knitting blog, I would love that. I know some people are still blogging, but like there was tons. Yeah, and they would frog stuff. And I was like, what is frogging? Rip it, rip it, rip it. Makes sense. That's why there's like Jenny, Jenny and her kids have a yarn dyeing business, and the kids sort of sell their yarns that they make, and they call it Frogget Fibers, and that's where the Frogget Fibers comes from. So if you're kind of deep in the knitting world, you sort of know what Frogget Fibers means. I miss those blogs too, Suzanne. I do too. It actually goes back to the days of the knitting blogs before Ravelry. You're right, Suzanne, because when I joined Ravelry, I actually joined Ravelry because the knitting blogs were linking to patterns on Ravelry. And I didn't really want to join because I didn't really know what it was, but it only wanted a username and an email address. Or no, sorry, a username and a password. So I was like, well, okay. And then, of course, I realized, like, you know, what it was. So, yeah. Oh, what are you doing to me today? Frogging is not a traditional word for ripping out. Oh, you guys make me laugh. All right, this is from Charlotte again. She has been a busy lady, and she wasn't there for our Maker Morning on Wednesday, but I know that she was probably busy working on something. So Felicia was playing around with overshot on the weekend, and she let me weave a little bit of it, and now I'm addicted to overshot. So I'm trying to like clear off my looms so that I can put an overshot sampler on the looms, just so that I can keep playing. So this is from Charlotte again, and I love these colors because it's so fall. I have never had such fun homework. She's taking an online class by Janet Dawson called Unraveling Overshot. This color reminds me of pumpkin pie. The pattern weft is Brassard 8/4 cotton in burnt orange, and then the warp and the plain weave is Brassard 2/8 cotton in linen. Isn't that beautiful? Nora loves it. She's standing here like, do you want to come over here and stand with me and do community participation? We've only got a couple more. This is more weaving from Tracy. This is just so fantastic. Tracy says, I am in love. These are just a few towels that came off my Jane Stafford Parrot Warp. I find it so meditative to sit at the loom, and it is so fun to see each towel just come to life. I agreed to sell a few at a friend's Women in Craft open house, so I am suddenly in production mode. I have some log cabins on the loom now, and I'm planning Christmas and Hanukkah designs. Isn't that amazing? So Tracy, funnily, she was talking to us in queries about getting a rigid heddle, and we were like, yep, you should definitely do it. She'd found a used one. She was all excited, and then she was like, well, what about a floor loom? Like, shouldn't I just go to a floor loom if that's really what I want to do? So next thing we know, she's brought home a floor loom, and now she's off to the races. So how fantastic is that? This is from Katrina. It shakes the table, Nora. This is from Katrina, our very own Crafty Jacks. This is her palette and her wound warp for her next set of towels. Isn't that incredible? So she's come up with this warp on her own. Like, it's not from a pattern or anything, and she's warped it all up. I can't wait to see these towels wound. I think they're going to be, or woven. I think they're just going to be absolutely beautiful. This is also from Laureline. She's the scrappy blanket is off the loom. She's been working on this for weeks, and she wanted to get her loom cleared off. She still needs finishing, and she does have yarn left over for another one. But the next one she's going to do in some kind of a twill. So this was plain weave. But isn't that gorgeous? I love those grays in there. Oh, just anything with gray. And then lastly, this is from Kat. This is sewing. She shared this on the Slack channel, and she made herself a silly Halloween dress, and I just love this so much. So if you guys can see, let me see if I can click on it. I'll make it bigger. She's got their skulls. Isn't that, and with like orangey roses.
Flowers.
I know, they look like flowers, don't they? Yeah, Nora thought they were flowers, but it's just a fantastic Halloween dress. So I hope, Kat, that you're enjoying wearing it this weekend. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for participating this week and for being here. Don't shake the table, Nora. They're gonna give everybody they're gonna get like motion sick. I hope everybody has a wonderful Halloween weekend for those who are sort of doing something for Halloween. I hope that you enjoyed the show. It was longer than usual this week, but I hope that you learned something. I hope you enjoyed all the knitting and spinning talk and all of the sharing. And I just want to thank you guys for being here this week and for taking time. We have Wool Circle this Tuesday for those who are part of that tier on Patreon. It's called the Wool Circle on Patreon. That live stream is at 6:30 Pacific on Tuesday morning, 9:30 Eastern. I'm going to start moving that around a little bit and playing with some other times so that more people can join, because I know that not everybody can join that early Pacific, but for others it works really super well. So if you guys can let me know some times that work well. I know noon often works really well for people because that catches the UK at 8 p.m. So, and then we've got Queries and Explorations next Saturday, and we will be spiral plying. So that'll be really fun for that group. So until next week, happy Halloween. Have a wonderful, safe Halloween for those who are having some fun with that. And happy knitting, happy spinning, happy weaving, happy all the things. I'll see you guys next week. Bye, everyone.